I actually have 7 children. I have a husband and we have a blended family, which includes 2 of his children. So in total, we have 9 children. Their ages range, well, I'll start with Brianna, who's my oldest, and she is 23 years old. And then I have Sierra, she's 19. And then my husband's daughter, Azaria, she is 14. And then we have Anaya, who's 13. And then I'm sorry, Azaria is 15, Anaya's 14, and then Quan is 13. It's a lot to keep up with. So, and then we have Kaya, who is 11. And then we have twins who are 7 years old. And then we have our little bonus baby, which is a whole story in itself, but Makai, and he is 5. So that's our brood. It's a lot of us. It's all, yeah, it's a lot, and it's never a dull moment. Um, I would say my motherhood journey started when I was 17, and I had very early on, earlier than I expected, obviously. But I had my daughter Brianna. I was a senior in high school, just living my life, planning on going to college, getting ready, looking forward to leaving home, leaving the nest. And I found out I was pregnant. I found out I had been with her father since ninth grade. And, we were just dating and, just living as teenagers do, never even thinking that, this was a possibility. So I found out I was pregnant. I remember being just in a state of disbelief. I kind of went in probably to some type of like depression. I didn't know it at the time, but I was just I felt like this was the worst thing that could have ever happened to my life. And just feeling like my life was over at that point in time. But then, I went through with the pregnancy, made the decision that I was going to keep her, because there was the decision on the table, like if should keep her, or, should I give her up for adoption? Should I choose abortion? I didn't know. I'm still young, so young, and having to be faced with these decisions. But I decided to keep her and go on with the pregnancy, and I had her on November 27th, 1997. And that moment changed my life. Like, when I tell you, when they put her in my arms, like, it was just like that. Like, depression, all of that I didn't care about. It was just like, I couldn't believe that I had brought this, life into the world, and I just remember I just changed, and I became like a completely different person. Everything, all my thoughts were about her at that point in time. So I mean, I had her. She actually had some issues when she was born, where she had to stay in the hospital in the NICU for a week. And that was probably one of the hardest weeks ever. If you've ever had to see your child, which I know a lot of people go through this, and you have to see your child hurt and, going through all these different things, people poking and prodding at them and everything, and they're so little and, helpless. That was like the hardest week of my life. I cried so much. My face was swollen, everything and I had her on Thanksgiving Day of all days to give thanks, right? And my mom till this day calls her turkey baby. So um, but she stayed in the NICU for a week, and I was doing everything. I was there every day. I was pumping milk and bringing milk to her, and just everything, all of my energy, all of my thoughts went into this new life that I have to take care of, and I need to make sure it's like safe, and that my child, my baby is good. So after she finally came home, she ended up having colic. And for moms who have dealt with babies with colic, I tell you, is like the most stressful. I mean, she screamed for 3 months. She screamed and cried. I didn't get any sleep. We had to bring her dad had to actually come stay with me, and my mom and her dad and myself took shifts and, taking care of her just so we could get sleep. And she would sleep all day and then scream all night long. So I wasn't getting any sleep. And then I went back to school because I had to finish my senior year. And while I was at home with her for the first 6 weeks, I had a tutor who would come to the house and, you bring my schoolwork, and I would do my schoolwork, and my grades fell to like the lowest they had ever been. And I had prided myself on being an honor roll student. So I was not happy about that. But I got through that, went back into school for my last semester, and I actually got out of school early. I actually got out in March, and then I went back to graduation in June. But I got right out of school and I got a job with a local county where my mom worked, and I was like actually doing pretty good for myself. Things were turning out better than I had imagined while I was pregnant. And so she was thriving. We had got over the colic and, she was in daycare and everything was going pretty well. I married her father. And so now at this point, I'm not only a mom to, this little baby, but I'm somebody's wife, and had no clue how to be somebody's wife at that age. But I felt like I was doing the right thing and doing what I needed to do so to give my child a better life, a two-parent household where, she's raised, with love and of the both of her parents together. But that was some trying years between when I had her and then when I had Sierra, who's 19, which I had her when I was 21. But she was planned because you remember I was married. So she was planned. Brianna would beg us for a sister. She wanted a sister so bad. And so luckily God heard her prayers and we had a girl. And so Sierra came along at 21. I'm at 21. I'm working full time. I'm going to school at this point too. I would leave work during my lunch hour and I would go to the campus. I was going to George Mason University. And I would go to the campus and I would come back to work after I went to class. So I was like hustling because I'm like in my mind, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to reach my goals. I'm going to go to college still. I'm not going to be the same, stereotypical teenage mom. I just didn't want to have, didn't want that for myself. But then life also has ways of, changing up what your plans are too. So we had Sierra and it was good. We had a nice little family, little 2-kid family, husband, wife, we had our own place, still working. He actually got a job at the county as well. So we were making pretty good money. We were only 21, 22 years old. So we thought we were living a life, we're doing pretty good for ourselves. And then we just went through different things, growing, maturing, and we ended up, separating. When the girls Brianna was 4, no, Cece was 4, Sierra was 4, we call her Cece. Cece was 4 and Brianna was 8. And we decided to separate. It just wasn't working. I was growing and maturing, and he was just growing. No maturing. The maturing didn't happen. I don't even know if it's happened yet to this point, but that's neither here nor there. But so I ended up, just moving out with me and the girls, and we moved out of our apartment, got a townhouse, and I was actually doing my thing then, because it's like I didn't have any type of young adulthood, like party time, any of that, because I'm a mom since 17. So I took this time to go back out there and I'm gonna do me for a little while. I'm gonna take some time for me. The girls are older, they spent a lot of time at their grandparents' house with his parents. So I would have weekend time to myself. So I started going out, hanging out with my friends. I didn't got me a new group of friends and everything. I'm feeling myself, and I had never been. I was so I don't know if you want to call it kosher or whatever you call it, but I was just really, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do any of those things. So now it's like, okay, I'm gonna go out, let me try a little drink, let me try a little bit of this, a little that. So I was out there, I was hanging out like literally every single weekend. Never missed a weekend. Sometimes it was Thursday through Sunday, but I was having a good time. And I was, dating around, and I had never really dated. I had been with their dad since I was 15. So, dated around. And then I ended up meeting my now husband in the club. They said you can't find love in the club, but you absolutely can. So I met him in 2005, and we dated, and we had, some issues in there because he still wasn't that mature either. They say men mature a little bit slower than we do. So we had some issues, but we ended up making it work. And I ended up pregnant with our son, my first son. I wanted a son so bad. And in 2007, God blessed me with our son, Quan. So, and he was just the most beautiful baby I had just ever seen in my life. I couldn't even believe like he was mine. It was just so crazy. And it was like, I had two girls, my husband had two girls. So this is our first boy for both of us. So we're, both just over the moon. We had the biggest baby shower. All my family came. It was so awesome. I just loved it. So we had him, and we moved in together. We had him, we were raising him and the girls together. His daughters moved to Georgia with their mother. So that created some issues just because she kind of kept him from seeing them. So that was very, very hard on me because I was kind of feeling guilty that he was there with my kids, but being denied the right to see his. So that kind of, put a burden on things a little bit, but we made it through that. And, he was continuing to raise my girls like his own. And then we had Quan, which was ours together. And then 2 years later, Kaya came along. And Kaya came, and she was just this like joy, just always smiling with her big dimples. And she was Quan's like little best friend. He just loved her so much. And they were only 2 years apart. So he just really, really loved and enjoyed having his little sister. And then, my girls, the older ones, are becoming teenagers now. So this is a territory I had never been in besides being a teenage girl myself. And when I tell you that the teenage girls is something, woo, they need a manual. You need a manual to deal with the teenage girls. So but everything was going good. The girls are getting older. They're starting to have their little activities, their friends. And, so we're out more, having to go to these functions, this and that. And Quan's doing football, and, Kaya's getting a little bit older. She's going to dance class. So we're just doing the normal, family thing, mother, father, and now 4 kids at this time. So we, decided maybe we should have one more, just one more, because we both want one more boy. So in 2013, I found out I was pregnant, and I was like, okay, actually I found out on Christmas Eve, 2013 Christmas Eve. And I was enjoying myself. I was drinking a little wine and everything. And I was like, let me take this pregnancy test just in case. Let me see what's going on. And come to find out, the pregnancy test came up really quick, right away. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant again. And just really happy. I woke my husband up and gave him the pregnancy test as a gift. I told him I wanted to give him a gift before Christmas Day. So I gave it to him, and he was just surprised, just smiling and, excited. And so we just start discussing, how we're going to tell the other kids, right? So the next day is Christmas, where we open all the gifts. And at the end, we're like, we have one more gift for you guys. And they're all looking around like, oh, what is it? What is it? And so we pull out the pregnancy test, and we're like, we're pregnant again. And the looks on their faces were like, that's the gift. That's what you have to tell us. They looked so disappointed, almost as if we ruined their little Christmas. Because I think they felt like, it was enough of them and they didn't need any more, So, fast forward to probably like eight when I was 8 weeks pregnant, I go and get an ultrasound and they're like, well, we see not only one baby, but two. And we could not believe it because anybody who knows my husband, he was always talking about he was going to have these twin boys. And I would always say, you're not going to have, unless we're able to pay for them and put them in there, you ain't having twin boys. And he knew it ran in my family on both sides. And so he was just like, no, we're gonna have the twins. And I'm telling you, he manifested them because we found out that there were two babies in there, and he just fell off the chair, literally fell off the chair, and was just so happy. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my gosh, like there's two in there, and he's just happy. And the nurse is like, are you all right, sir? She's thinking he's like about to pass out. And he said, yeah, he was like, those are my boys. And he said it, he called it. And so we just really was just enjoying the pregnancy. We ended up going, and all the kids went, and we found out that they were boys. That's when they actually started getting excited about the babies coming. Because before then they were like, when they found out it was two, they were still like, we didn't even want the one. And now it's going to be two. um, so when Quan, which was the only boy at the time, found out, when he found out it was boys, he was just like ecstatic, and he literally walked out the room like, okay, that's all I needed to know. And then he was like all for it the rest of the pregnancy. So anyway, we go fast forward. I'm about 7 months pregnant with the twins, and I end up going into preterm labor. So I had to go into the hospital, spend 2 weeks in the hospital, on complete bed rest, and just missing being at home, missing my kids. Like, I had no idea I was gonna have to go to the hospital and end up staying. So I basically ended up telling the doctor, like, look, I promise you I will stay on bed rest, but I need to go home. Like, I got to get out of here. And so by that time, we were getting pretty close to when I would have been full term. So they let me go home, and I did my 2 weeks. And then my aunt came down to visit me, my Aunt Danny. And she came down. She was like, I'm just checking on you, just trying to make sure everything is good, And I'm like, everything's good. I said, but I feel like I'm going to have these babies this weekend. And she's like, no, you're not going to have them. You're not going to have them. And so she goes all the way back to she gets on the train to go all the way back to New Jersey. And that night I go into labor. So she actually turns around. I couldn't even believe it. By this time I'm in the hospital, and I had the babies the next day. I had them at 8:32, 8:21 and 8:32. And so I had them, and I had to actually deliver one vaginally and then have a C-section with the other, which was my worst fear the whole pregnancy. I just didn't. I was like, please God, don't let me have to deliver both ways. And I did. Baby B, which is Malik now, he he was basically kind of stuck. So they had to go and do a C-section to get him out. But anyway, I was just glad it was over at the end of it. It didn't even matter anymore. I was just glad it was over. And so my aunt, I'm in the room, and I'm kind of half out of it, but all of a sudden my aunt opens the door and she's back. I could not believe she turned right around and got back on the train and came back. And it just meant the world to me, because besides me and, my husband and the kids, that's all we really had. We didn't have any family, close enough to, be there. So just seeing her come back, and then I felt good because I knew that, he would have help with the kids while I'm at the hospital still with the babies and stuff like that. So that worked out. It worked out perfectly. And then Fast forward, we decided we didn't want to, that was enough. We got our 2 boys, we got more than we, had asked for at that point in time. So we were good to go. So I had decided that I was gonna get my tubes tied. Um, and so we went to the visit, you go to your 6 week checkup and they ask you, well, what do you want to do? Blah, blah, blah. So they tell me that there's this new thing on the market called eSure. And my doctor is telling me, like, this is going to be perfect for you because you have the twins and, you'll be able to be up the next day and you won't have any downtime. And I'm like, and she's like, well, we do it in the office and we insert these coils into your tubes in the office. And I'm like, that doesn't even sound right. Like, that sounds painful. I'm not doing that. And she was like, well, if you want, well, I'll do it under general anesthesia at the hospital. And so I'm like, okay, well, at the time, all they had is this little pamphlet to give me. It didn't give a whole lot of information, but the basics of what the procedure is and whatnot. It didn't get any disclaimers as to what could possibly go wrong, except for the fact that it was supposed to be 99%, 99.9% effective, but with that small chance, if you were to get pregnant, it would be an ectopic pregnancy, and you would, have to go to the emergency right away because your life would be at risk. So I'm like, okay, I can take that risk. So fast forward, I go and I get I go ahead and to the hospital, get the eSure, and what, 8 months later, I find out I'm pregnant. I find out I'm pregnant. I couldn't believe it. The twins were only 8 months. Well, yeah, 8 months old. And so I still have these little babies at home, and then I'm pregnant again. And I literally, because I kept on saying, well, my cycle hasn't come. Why isn't my cycle coming? And the doctors tell me it's probably because of the eSure, it can, change your periods and things like that. But something just kept telling me that it wasn't just that, because I started having all those mom things that we have when we're pregnant, like the smells and everything was real potent again. And so I took a pregnancy test, and I couldn't believe it came up positive. And my husband was in the office working. I went to his office and I fell to the floor, fell to my knees. I just could not believe it. I didn't want to have any more kids. I didn't want to be pregnant again. And I'm still trying to, raise these little 2 babies at one time. And so we had to literally get right up and go to the hospital because they said that, if you do get pregnant, it will be ectopic and you needed to go to the emergency room. So we did. We went straight to the emergency room. We get there and they do an ultrasound. And my baby boy, he is in the perfect place where he needs to be. Everything was good, just looking like a normal pregnancy. So um, so we had to make this decision. They ask you, well, do you want to continue with the pregnancy? And we're like, of course, yeah, we're going to continue with the pregnancy, even though I still have these coils somewhere in there. Obviously it came out or something happened to be able to fertilize this baby. But so yeah, we decided that we're going to go on with the pregnancy, and we went on with the pregnancy. I had a lot of pain during the pregnancy because the coils had broken off, and one was stuck in my uterus and one was in my back. So there was nothing they could do because I was pregnant. They couldn't do anything until after he was delivered. So in February 8th in 2016, we had our little bone, I call him our bonus baby. And his name is Makai. And we had him and he came out perfect. Nothing was wrong with him. We were just we were worried the whole pregnancy, but it was just, he came out perfect. And we just were thanking God. We were like, this is nothing but God. And in one way, you think that you're controlling things. I thought I was controlling, like, I'm done having kids. This is it. But God showed me something completely different. I cannot believe it. I'm like, oh, it's almost like the Virgin Mary, like, where did this baby come from? Like, but but it worked out. He was good. And anyway, after that, I went through a series of surgeries and things like that I had to get a full hysterectomy to get rid of the coils. So that is when I knew for sure I wouldn't have no more babies. We were for sure done. And so that was like 3 months after I had him. So I'm pretty much raising almost like triplets at one time. And it was hard, it was difficult, but the kids really helped out. My husband was really good with them. And so, here we are today, and they're still like triplets, boys running and terrorizing the whole house. And the girls are flourishing, they're doing well. The older ones, Brianna has her own business, two businesses actually, and she has her own place and she's doing good. Sierra just got a new job with Amazon, and she's doing very well for herself. She's in school, with the pandemic, she's in school online. But she's still going full time. And besides that, the other kids are all home doing homeschooling because of the pandemic. And that's something we don't even have enough. I already took up a lot of time. We don't have enough time for the pandemic and the school homeschool, because that is something crazy all in itself. So yeah, that's my motherhood journey.
Number two, how has motherhood changed you?
So motherhood has changed me in a lot of different ways. I think I mentioned, earlier on, just changing just with the birth of my first daughter and just having her in my arms changed me immediately. I think the most profound way that it's changed me is it's made me, made me selfless. you know, like I'm just, everything is about my kids. Like when I wake up, it's about my kids, go to sleep, it's about the kids. I don't have a lot of time to, think about me, because I'm so focused on them. I'm trying to raise good human beings to go out in the world and give back positively to the world. This is my goal. So I think that's what it would be. It would be just being selfless and just having to always think about someone else before yourself, having to put them first, and making sure that they're good. That is always my goal on a daily basis. And making sure, well, wanting to make sure, we go through what we go through, but wanting them to have a better next day than their yesterday.
Um,
Okay.
so, we've talked
Mhm.
about, a little bit about Grandma Evans, and she was a huge
Yeah.
influence to all of us. So tell me
Yes.
a little bit about that if you want to talk about like Grandma Evans and her influence on you, and tell me about, your mom and how your mom made you into the mom that you are and her influences on you.
Guess the two very important, most important women in my life, just from birth on, is my mom and my grandma Evans. They both have played such an important role in my life. I remember with my grandmother, um, she was like everybody's grandmother. She was my great grandmother, but I still was like, I'm one of the grandkids. I'm not the great grand, I'm the grandkids. And she was just the most special, kind, loving, pure-hearted person even to this day, I've ever known. She just cared so much for her family. Her family was so important, and not even just her family by blood. People who came in who needed help, who needed food, whatever. That was her thing. Food, her biscuits, her pies. I mean, just everything. My grandmother. I always brag about my grandmother. I'm like, if you didn't have a grandmother like mine, you was missing out.
All right. So, um, the next question is, what advice do you have for a soon to be mom or a new mom?
Okay. Well, I have a lot of advice, so I had to kind of narrow it down. Okay. So, and I had to like jot down my notes because I don't want to forget anything because I'm trying to help those moms or those mothers to be. So I would say that the one thing that is very important is to cherish the time that you have when they're young. That is one thing that I feel like I reflect on a lot of times. I find myself like remembering back to, oh, when they were babies, and you had that time with them where they were bonded to you, and all that, you were their whole world. I mean, you were what was keeping them alive. that time that you had feeding them and them, the bonding, them looking you in your eyes and looking at you like you're just with that unconditional love, like you're the best thing that's ever happened to them. They didn't talk back. They can't, they don't, you don't have to deal with any of that, and so that time goes by so fast, and we're in that time and we're moving just as fast, "Oh, I can't wait till they're walking. I can't wait till they're this. I can't wait till they're that." But then in hindsight, you're really like, I should have took more time to be present and be in the moment and actually cherish that time that I had with them. So that would be my best piece of advice to give to moms and mothers, to be just cherish that time before they start walking and having their own minds and doing them.
Oh,
Time flies by so fast. Like there's some moments that I can't even remember. Like you want to cherish the first time they started walking, but by the time you have as many as I have, I don't remember.
one thing that no one told you about motherhood that you wish you knew.
So the one thing that I wish someone would have told me about motherhood is, I wish someone would have just laid it out for me, how difficult of a job this will be, how difficult this will be, where it's something that you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, not until they're 18. You're going to be doing this for the rest of your life. Um, a lot of motherhood comes with, oh, it's this, all the fun and, all the joys of motherhood, as they call them. But no one really tells you about those days when you think you can't make it, those days when you're wanting to give up, those days when you just want to run away and not look back. Because we have those moments, we have those days too. It's not all just, gumdrops and rainbows, So I really wish that, sometimes, how they have books on birthing and stuff like that, and they'll tell you this is what you're going to experience during birth. And a lot of people will say, well, they'll go through their birth and they'll say, well, I didn't read that could happen. I didn't read about this. Well, that's the same way I feel about parenting and motherhood. Like if I could just have had some, someone say, look, yes, motherhood is beautiful, but it is going to be the longest job you have and the toughest job you have, so yeah, that's what I would say, that I wish somebody would have just laid it out, been straightforward with me, just told me like, look, it seems all fun and games, but it's going to be the most difficult thing you'll ever do.
With your breast cancer diagnosis, you know, how did that affect your parenting? I mean, obviously, it's a big deal,
Yeah.
but there's a lot that comes with that.
Yeah.
And having to be mom, especially, you've got a husband who works,
Yeah.
and, now you've got the mental, emotional, and physical weight that goes along with a diagnosis like that. Like, how did you handle that? Like, what was your go-to to get through all of that?
Okay. So in 2019, I was diagnosed with stage 1 triple negative breast cancer. And I was just, what, 39 years old. I'm 39 years old, having been told that, oh, you don't need a mammogram until you're 40. Oh, it doesn't happen when you're young, these different things. And um, thankfully I was, I'm very aware about my, health, and you can even sometimes be like a hypochondriac. I don't know, but I'm glad I was, because I was able to find, the cancer early. But the toll that it takes on you, the first thing when you hear that diagnosis is that you think about is your family. That's immediately the first thing you think. And all I could think about is, how am I going to, one, get through this journey of trying to fight the cancer and beat it, and at the same time prepare for if I don't. Like, who's going to be here? Who's going to take care of my kids? Am I going to not get to see them grow up? My husband's going to be left with all these kids to take care of? Like, what in the world And my biggest question, and I know we're not supposed to question God, but it was why, like, why me? Like, God, you know, I have all of these kids, you know, I have all of this responsibility. Like, why me? Um, and so you know, at first you go through a lot of tests and different things like that when you're first diagnosed. And then you find out, you know, well, you're stage this and here's the prognosis. And I find out that this cancer is one of the most aggressive cancers, breast cancers that you can have. And the only treatment for it is chemo and radiation. So then you're like, well, damn, I gotta have the worst type of breast cancer at that. Like, what in the world? And I can't just take a pill for it. I have to go through chemo and radiation. There's no question. That's the only way that you can fight it. So I ended up having surgery, had the cancer, the lump removed, but then they go and do the chemo and stuff to make sure that none of the you know, the cells have traveled throughout the out your body. So basically it's like a cleanup that you go through. um but I knew going into it that I had my husband who's very supportive. I knew he's the type of husband that he can do anything I can do. He can cook like I can cook. He can take care of the household. He can take care of the kids. So I knew I had that. But I also had to rely on my family outside of that, which a lot of times I'm very prideful, I guess you could say. I don't like to ask for help. I don't want to really have to rely on anybody. I want to, I got this. Like, I had all these kids, I got them. I don't want to have to ask for help in raising them. But we just knew that what we were facing, we would need like all the help we could get at this point, because the kids were going to possibly see me sick, see mommy not, because I went from feeling and being completely healthy to all of a sudden having to go through chemo, for 8 months and having to go to chemo every day and then having to go to radiation every day. Um, And so it really took a toll on me initially. Mentally, it was like probably one of the hardest mental challenges that I had. I went into depression. I was, I was completely not myself. I didn't even recognize myself in the beginning because it was just so many uncertainties. And all I could think about, I would look at my kids and I would just bust out crying because I just couldn't imagine not being here for them. And just seeing them, and you can see the worry on their faces as well, and seeing my husband, and I can see he was worried, but he's trying to stay strong, for all of us. And so we got through the the beginning of the treatment. Once you get it gets a little bit easier once you get, find out that you got a routine. So this is what you have to do. The doctor's like, okay, you're going to have chemo for 4 weeks. For the first 2 months is every other week. This is your schedule. And then after that, you're going to have 12 weeks of chemo and you have to go every week, every Tuesday, this time, and you're going for these infusion things like that. And when I went for my first, chemo treatment, they tell you like you're definitely going to lose your hair with this type of chemotherapy that we use. It takes out your hair. Just, there's no chance that it won't. So you're being faced with that. And now I'm thinking like, now my kids, everybody has to see me bald. And I liked at that point in time, my hair was everything, my wigs, my weaves. Like I can't braid my hair to do my weaves no more. Like I was like mourning the loss of that. Like, as women, our hair is our crown. And so I had to deal with losing that. And then once you get into the treatments themselves, it literally tears your body down to start anew, basically. And so it was just, thankfully, my cancer center, they do really good with having medicines on board before you get really sick. like back in the day, you just everybody just got sick with chemo, but now they have a variation of different medications to keep you from getting so sick. But it's still, because it's tearing your body down and your body is trying to regrow like bone marrow and stuff like that. And so some nights I would be in excruciating pain, nauseated, no energy. So I really heavily relied on my husband to do everything that I usually did, and my kids to cooperate and help and things like that. And everybody really stepped up, my family, my neighbors. We have neighbors that are our family, like we were saying, talking about earlier. We're not blood relatives, but they definitely became family. They would bring water and food and make meals and dinners and things like that. um but it really was probably the hardest thing that I've gone through thus far. And um, when you're being faced with life and death, and having to make arrangements, like if I pass away, this is what I want to happen with my kids. This is what, having those conversations are very, very difficult. And like I said, it was the hardest thing just imagining not being here, to see my kids grow up. And so um, I just got through it, just leaning on my husband a lot and just going through, just looking at every day. It was just another day that I was in the past that I'm moving forward to be beating it. And so at the end, I got my prognosis, and the chemo works. There wasn't any trace of the cancer. They had removed the malignant lump initially, but again, like I said, the chemo was to clean up any that were lingering. And then I had to do radiation, and radiation is grueling because you have to go for, I went for 6 weeks. I had 30 treatments. I had to go 5 days a week every day. And you go through, my skin burned really bad, and you're in pain, you're tired, it zaps all the energy out of you. And dealing with that while the kids are still, to a certain extent, the younger ones too, they understand but not fully. They still want mommy to be mommy, and mommy to be up and doing this and doing that. But like I said, my husband really was able to keep that in balance. And so I was able to really just focus on getting better. And so I finished radiation in January of 2020, right before the pandemic hit. And I was just thankful that I had made it through. I got through everything I needed to get through. And the doctors said, you're in remission. Because of the type of cancer that it is, I still have to be seen every 3 months by my oncologist for 5 years. Because after the 5 years, then your prognosis, increases, of course. But for the first 5 years, I have to go every 3 months and get checked. But I'm just, through the whole thing, it really taught me to just keep faith, in God. And I was able to see that even if something did happen to me, my husband definitely has it. I don't have to worry about, worry about my kids or worry about how they're going to be taken care of, or anything like that. And it just, when you go through that, it strengthens your bond as well. Like our bond got stronger because I seen him in what he did, and him being there for me every day and taking care of me when I was in pain and sick, and he went to every single treatment that I had, and he didn't miss one. So it really brought us even closer than we already were. So it was really a learning experience. It's still an ongoing situation, but I'm stronger in going through it and knowing that I got through it and I'm still here. And so it's just, I'm thankful. I'm grateful to God to still be here and have my kids getting on my nerves like they used to.